Alright guys, so guys, I figure now would probably be a good time to kind of catch you up on my car history, as well as kind of explain my sort of curse when it comes to vehicles that I own. I've obviously not always been into cars. When I was younger, I didn't really, get into cars all that much. My dad worked on our own cars all the time, but I never really got into it. I viewed it as more of a chore than anything else. But after I got my first job, I got a car, and I started to kind of fall in love with it, especially the modification aspect of it. My first car was a 1999 Saturn SL1. Now, that's not a very awesome car. It's not like a super cool first car for anybody or anything like that. It was just a commuter car, but I loved it. So after I got my first car, I went to college and I met Jessica, my now wife. At the time, she was driving a 1999 Saab 9.3 convertible. It also was not a great car, a little bit more sporty than mine obviously, but those cars are so difficult to work on. When we started dating, I started doing a lot of repairs to it because it was breaking all the time. When she got her first apartment after college with a friend, she decided that she was done with that car, so she sold it and bought the Dodge Avenger. So at some point, I decided that the Saturn was not cutting it for me anymore, and I just wanted an upgrade. I found a 2005 Pontiac G6 on Craigslist for a fairly decent price. I believe it was $17.50. So I ended up purchasing that, and I gave the Saturn to my dad, whose car had just started, coming into some issues that he wasn't able to fix, and he needed it daily. Fast forward a year or so, and me and Jessica had just gotten married a little while ago, and she was working at an axle manufacturing company. I was working at a call center, and we decided that we had the money in the budget for a fun car. I just wanted something small, compact, and manual. Those were my really only requirements. So we set out on the search for a small manual car that was cheap. We found a $800 1993 Toyota Celica. Now, we bought this car already riced out. In fact, those pictures are actually from the advertisement that I purchased it from, because honestly the car didn't last long enough for me to take any decent photos of it. We bought that car, and I did all of the normal maintenance stuff to it that you would do before you actually start dailying a car, and it was fine. The car was perfect, but what the previous owner had neglected to mention was that it leaked oil. I started dailying it to work, and it was awesome, but about a week after I had done the oil change in it, so about a week and a half, 2 weeks maybe, after purchasing the car, I drove it to work one day, and then when I went to drive it home, it just wouldn't idle, and I parked it in a mall parking lot, and it was almost out of oil. We put some oil in it, and it just had the worst rod knock ever. But as I mentioned, we were living in an apartment complex at the time, and the complex didn't allow me to keep the car there, not running. And honestly, at that point, I didn't feel like dealing with it anymore, so I ended up selling it for about half of what I paid for it, which was like $400. So honestly, it wasn't, I didn't take a huge loss on it, but it wasn't great. Also, during this time, I had been steadily improving the G6. I got new seats, I'd got new headlights, I'd taken care of some of the rust on it. I had broken and then subsequently repaired the front bumper after sliding it off of the road in an ice storm. At this point in time, my buddy who worked with me at the call center, Evan, who you guys have met, he introduced me to a channel called Mighty Car Mods. If any of you guys have seen the show Mighty Car Mods, the build Super Gramps really kind of struck a chord with me. I love wagons. I especially love wagons from like the 2000s era. The Subaru, the 4th generation Subaru Legacy wagon, the Audi A4 wagon, the Cadillac CTS-V wagon, all wagons. I love the wagon body style overall. So when I saw the Gramps and subsequently the Super Gramps project by Mighty Car Mods, I wanted a legacy wagon. I wanted it so bad, and I started searching online for one. I found a 2005 Subaru Legacy GT wagon on Craigslist for about $5,500, I believe. And I went out there, I test drove it, it was perfect. The only thing that was really wrong with it was the display on the dual climate control didn't work, which really wasn't that big of a hindrance because you could still tweak the settings, you just couldn't see what settings you were tweaking. So I haggled with the guy, I got it to drop down to $4,000 and I purchased the car right there. I drove it home that day and I fell in love with the car. Honestly, I don't think I've ever had an experience like that in a vehicle before where I got in and I just felt connected. I felt at one with the car. I sold the G6 about a week after purchasing the Subaru, and right about then is when everything went to crap. So a couple of days after selling the G6, I sold it to a buddy. He texted me and basically, he texted me some pictures and was like, hey, so sorry I broke your car. It wasn't my car at the time, but I was honestly pretty upset. It was a car that I had put a lot of time and effort into, and that kind of sucked to see it all just blown to bits like that. Then a couple of days after that, I was driving to work in the Subaru, and all of a sudden the gas pedal just wouldn't respond. So I pulled off to the side of the road, I tried to start it, it started up without an issue, so I got back onto the road, started accelerating, and then I got up to about 35 miles an hour, and then it just started to do the same thing. No throttle response, so I pulled off to the side of the road again, and then nothing. I couldn't get it to start, it sounded like absolute garbage when I tried to start it, and I just broke down. So I called my wife, she calmed me down long enough for me to call the insurance company, have them come pick up the car and deliver it to my apartment complex. A couple of days after that, I'd gotten word from my parents that my dad had been in a car accident. And after I found out that my dad was okay and everything was fine, turns out he was driving the Saturn. So within the span of a week, all of the cars that I'd ever owned that were running at that time died. Since then, it seems like any car that I own seems to immediately go to crap. Immediately after the Subaru died, I needed a daily. We had just spent all of that money on the Subaru, so we didn't have a whole lot of money left over. And we'd spent most of what we'd gotten back from the G6 on bills and such, so we had about $400 to play with. I went out, I found the Ford wagon, and the guy was trying to sell it for $600. I whittled him down to $400, and we bought that right on the spot. All of this couldn't have come at a more stressful time because we were moving from the apartment to the house that we are in now. So we'd already done all of the paperwork when the Subaru decided to die on me, and we were literally moving everything either the upcoming weekend or the weekend after, I can't remember which, but what ended up happening is I had to rent a U-Haul truck and car trailer to take the Subaru from I had to bring it from the Subaru dealership that was near our apartment complex in Flint all the way down to the house that we have in Detroit. So I wheeled it up onto the car trailer, brought it down here, and parked it in the garage and started to go to town on tearing it apart. This is the first time that I've ever actually fully disassembled an engine bay before, and I regret it. Like, a lot. Honestly, as much as it has taught me about cars, it was probably the wrong mistake. I bit off way more than I could chew, and it's been together and back apart again twice since that time, and I'm still probably nowhere near actually getting it running. So who knows, we'll see what happens from here. So I dailied the Ford a lot, and then I got a new job, and about 2 or so months after starting that new job, the Ford died on me. So we had to get a new daily, so we picked up the Cavalier, and I wheeled the Ford into the garage and replaced the water pump, the serpentine belt, all of the pulleys, a couple of other small things here and there. So I got it running again, or at least I thought I had, and so I started working on a little bit of the body work on the back. Obviously not a pro at obviously not a pro at body work, so I started just to kind of wing it. And I was getting to a point in time where I thought it was going to start looking okay, and then I tried moving the car one day and it just wouldn't start. So I put off the body work for the time being, trying to figure out what the heck was going on with the starting issues, and I honestly don't know what happened. So at the time, we couldn't justify having two cars that didn't run, that needed to have more money put into them. So we just got rid of the Ford. I think we got like $250 for it or something like that, and we just sent that on its way. That pretty much brings us up to speed. The only thing left to explain here is the Jeep. So we were looking for a four-wheel drive, either Jeep or truck, for a fair amount of time, and finally we came across this Jeep that had about 170-ish thousand miles on it and was right in our price range. So we went to go take a look at it. If you guys had watched the other video about us purchasing the Jeep, I did kind of like a quick once-over in that of the condition of the car. It was pretty good overall, and we took it out for a test drive. We took the car out for maybe 20 to 30 minutes, driving it around, getting it up to highway speed, driving it around in a parking lot just to see how it would handle in tight spaces. We took it to a place to have its engine codes read, just some issues with the exhaust, and I chalked that up to having something to do with the new exhaust that had been put on it, as well as a issue, one of the seatbelt sensors that had thrown a code, and none of those codes really scared me too much. So we went ahead and purchased the car. We drove it home. We drove it around a little bit. It ran perfectly fine. We parked it for a while, and then we wanted to go drive it again that night. It immediately jumped from like no oil pressure all the way up to high oil pressure, and I was like, whoa, that's probably not good. So we turned the car off and we went inside, and we're like, we'll deal with this in the morning, because at that point it was probably around midnight and we were both very tired, and we didn't have a whole lot of energy in us to deal with it. So woke up the next morning, go out to start it, and it just won't start. After doing a bit more investigation, I realized that I could get it to start and I could keep it idling if I had my foot on the accelerator. So that made me think that maybe something in the idle control was bad. So we went to AutoZone to go see if we could purchase the little valvey thing, and we could, but it was $90. So I went online that night and found a complete throttle body for $35. So I was like, well, that's what I'm gonna get, and we put that in, plugged it all up, works great. You'll see that towards the end of this video. We started it up again, and the oil pressure is still doing the same thing. So we looked it up, and the oil pressure sending unit might be bad. So we're gonna take a look at that next. I've already ordered the part, so we're going to throw that on as soon as possible. Anyway guys, you're pretty much now all caught up on my car history and whatnot. I will be doing a video in the future about the Subaru specifically, and what all we found when we got it all disassembled and everything like that. So I'm going to show you guys a couple of quick clips from fixing the Jeep and putting the new throttle body on, and then I will see you all in the next one. Have a great day, guys. How's it going, everybody? So today we are working on the Jeep. As I just explained, the Jeep is currently in non-functioning condition. So we're about to smash this onto the car and see what happens. So alright, I've already taken the airbox off and the throttle, just in prep, but we're about to pop the new one on here and see what happens. Hopefully it runs. Alright, I got the cables all on, the sensors all connected up, so let's give it a start. Alright, try and start it. Well, that's really loud, but we just don't have the airbox on. That oil pressure is what we got to take a look at. This is clicking. I'm not entirely sure what this is. And it's making that sort of scrapey sound, and I'm not entirely sure where that's coming from. And now we've got all the stuff on it.